I'm here to discuss why Hegel should be used to understand climate change, based on a dissertation by Scott Birchers, which you can find the link to below. You might be wondering, why philosophy and climate change? Well, that's okay, because that's exactly what I hope to address. But first, who is Hegel? George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel is an Enlightenment philosopher who revolutionized the way we approach history, consciousness, logic, and everything else that can be philosophized. We're going to use his book, The Sciences of Logic, to relate to climate change. The science of logic is a brilliant attempt to create an enclosed logical system in which every basic assumption is returned to and answered at the most complex level. Climate change is bound to affect all of its many original producers sooner or later, so a logical system like Hegel's is of much use. First, we start with the basic assumption that you can only understand something after you've mediated or introspected on it, but not immediately. This is precisely the case with climate change, as we cannot foresee the future effects in our immediate industrialization. Scientists even predicted in the 1970s that if greenhouse gas warming had occurred or is currently happening, the oceans would delay the warming for a few decades by absorbing the heat in their upper layer. In 1979, scientists said, "We may not be given a warning until the CO2 level is such that an appreciable climate change is inevitable." So in 1990, an intergovernmental panel on climate change said it would be another 10 years until good evidence would show up. And sure enough, 11 years later, a report came out that concluded that the world was getting warmer, as this chart informs us. But why do we want to mediate on these changes in the first place? Basically, to return to that naive state of immediacy, where industrialization and the economy boomed without fear of the earth. But is human activity and the earth bound to collide? Let's dig deeper into how humans are related to the earth. Here are humans, and here's the earth. Humans are not the earth, but humans are part of the earth. So does that mean the earth determines us, or do we determine the earth? The answer, according to Hegel's logic, is both. Indeed, Earth determines our being as much as we determine Earth's being. From this standpoint, we can understand that our ability to determine the Earth allows us to negate the Earth, and this, in turn, allows the Earth to negate us. You run into this relation more and more as human activity continues to emit greenhouse emissions and destroy other life forms, while the increase in certain kinds of catastrophes indicates that the Earth, no matter the size of our technology and infrastructure, can continue to negate us. Stott et al. Conducted a study on whether one such catastrophe, the 2003 summer heat wave in Europe, can be blamed by human activity. They concluded that anthropogenic changes at least doubled the chances of risk. Can we determine if it was humans or a natural event? The article quotes, "If loading a dice doubles the chances of 6, it follows that half the 6s you get are caused by the loading. The question of which 6s is meaningless. If you throw a 1, it does not prove the dice was not loaded." Hegel would certainly agree with this logic, as any division between human-caused activity and the Earth's pattern itself could only be an abstraction. They are, as explained, inseparable. This can be demonstrated by the fact that human activity and the Earth's consequential patterns always feed into each other. Hegel described this as the infinity loop, where all parts of an enclosed system relate to one another. You find this pattern everywhere in climate change, such as the melting of ice caps decreasing the albedo of the surface, thus allowing the ground to absorb even more heat and melt more ice, and so on. We find this pattern more distinctly in the Sahel drought in northern Africa in the 1970s and 80s. An initial deficit in pasturable land led to overgrazing of the remaining viable land. This laid the surface bare, attracted more sunlight, less rain, further limiting pasturable land, and so on. And how could this problem find a solution? In Hegelian logic, it would have to realize itself, or internalize its externalities. In other words, grazers would need to internalize the consequences to their actions, pool together, and share resources. Yet, this question is not so simple in the totality of climate change. There are multiple culprits at stake: political struggles, ideologies, industrial infrastructures, and all this would need to realize itself in order for any real change to come about. In this sense, you might conclude that climate change is kind of like a ball of twine. It's impossible to disentangle the ball, so it can't be straightened enough to be measured. But you can measure certain sections, loops, bundles, and so on as relations, just not all at once, like increases in hurricanes or heat waves, floods, and so on. But you can't understand the totality of climate change by these minor relations, nor radically alter the material content of the Earth. You mustn't forget, then, that the Earth has gone through ice ages, extreme warming, changes in participation, and so on. But still, the question remains, how much does human activity, these particular relations we've noted, affect all of climate change? And if this effect is severe, as evidence suggests, then on what Hegelian logical grounds can we say that we are negating our planet more than our planet negates us?